Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Project Chana Power Hour. As you know, each week we get together to learn and strengthen ourselves in our special mitzvahs of Kashrus, Shabbos, and Taras Mishpacha, as well as other halachas that are pertinent to women. Our goal is to prepare ourselves and our homes to welcome Mashiach. Of course, tonight's class is dedicated to Nishmas Aaron Isaac ben Chaim Tzvi and Harav Yitzchak ben Harav Eliezer Tzvi Alav Hashalom. May their neshamas have an aliyah. If you would like to dedicate a class in honor or schos of someone, please reach out via email to projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com. Please join us afterwards for tzedakah, tehillim, and a Mashiach thought. Okay, let's get started. So for our first class of Hilchos Shabbos with Rabbi Braun, we are excited to continue with part 9 on our topic of Muktzah. Rabbi Braun is the Mara D'Asra of Crown Heights, and we are grateful to have him back on our program tonight. Thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure. Okay, this week we're actually starting a new theme in Muktzah. It's still Muktzah, but a new topic in Muktzah. And the topic that we're talking about is the idea of basis. Basis means base, similar to the English pronunciation. Whenever you have something which is permissible to move on Shabbos, which is not Muktzah, but upon it you put something which is forbidden to move on Shabbos, a Muktzah item on it, and you put it there with a purpose, intentionally, you want it to stay there when Shabbos comes in, the bottom item, for clarity purposes, we'll call the bottom item the top item, just because that's simpler to understand. The bottom item is considered a basis, a base for the Muktzah, and the base for the Muktzah takes on all the properties of the Muktzah itself. So if you have something which you're not allowed to move in Shabbos for anything, because we learned in the past different categories of Muktzah, let's just talk now about the most extreme category of Muktzah, something which you're not allowed to move on Shabbos for any purpose, even if you need a place, even if you want to do something with it, even l'tzoyrech gufay mekayimai. And now you put this upon something else, on a chair, on a table, or whatever it is. The table, the chair now assumes Muktzah properties also, and you can't move the chair or the table, even after the Muktzah was removed. It's not because there's Muktzah on it. Even after the Muktzah was removed, it's still forbidden to move the basis. But in order to be a basis, it's only the condition with basis is it's only if the Muktzah was there bein hashmashas when Shabbos comes in. If Muktzah was placed on Shabbos itself, if Muktzah was placed on Shabbos itself, don't ask me how Muktzah got there on Shabbos, but that's not relevant to our discussion. So if Muktzah was placed on something when Shabbos came in, then it doesn't become a basis. It's only a basis if it was there when Shabbos came in. And then again, only if it was there intentionally. There was an intention that it should stay there when Shabbos comes in. If it fell there, it was left because you forgot, you had no intention it should be there on Shabbos, you forgot to take it off before Shabbos, it won't become a basis. So let me give you a practical example, which is the typical basis example in every Yiddish shtub, in every Jewish home. A table that has candles burning in it. It was intentional. The candles are lit before Shabbos comes in, and your intention is that the candles should be there on the table, even after the candles go out. And even if you would remove, through some way, the candles would be removed from the table, the candle is a basis to the flame, and the table is a basis to the candle, which is a basis to the flame. And once it's Muktzah, when Shabbos comes in, it says Muktzah for the rest of Shabbos. This table is a Muktzah table. And we're going to talk about solutions, how to deal with this particular issue. But I'll mention already right now, that's one of the reasons why people go and put something on the table before Shabbos comes in, so they should be able to move the table, like chalas, etc. This chumrah of basis is mentioned only in relation to Muktzah, to proper Muktzah. Arguably, it might apply also to lower categories of Muktzah, kalisha malachta l'isur, the typical hammer, which isn't a genuine Muktzah, because a hammer you could use if you want to crack a nut, and a hammer you could move if you need a place. But it could be the rules of basis will still apply, that if the hammer was on the table when Shabbos came in, I'm not sure which person exactly wants to keep the hammer on their Shabbos table, but you might want to keep the hammer in some other place on Shabbos. So that table assumes the property of klisha, the same properties as the hammer, just like the hammer it's limited. You can only move it for certain purposes if you need a place or because you want to do something permissible with the hammer. Same thing will happen out to the place where the hammer is. But if you put something on a basis, but you have no intention that it should be there as a basis, you don't want it to be there. Let me give you an example, because it's hard to understand this without an example. If you put a candlestick on the tablecloth, now really your agenda is not to put the candlesticks on the tablecloth. You really want to put on the table. The table has a tablecloth because you want to eat on a tablecloth. Your candlesticks you want to put on the table. Practically, you're not interested in taking off the tablecloth in the area where the candlesticks are, just also on the tablecloth. So the tablecloth does not become a basis. The table became a basis. You're not trying to put candles on a tablecloth. That's not what your purpose is. Your purpose is that the table should have candles. The tablecloth happens to be a technical thing that the table has a tablecloth. So since your agenda, I know it sounds a bit of a lumnish, a twist with a finger, but that's really the idea here. Since your purpose is not that it should be on the tablecloth does not become a basis, whereas the table itself does become a basis. One of the solutions, as we mentioned already earlier, is to have something on this basis. If it's a basis ledavar ha'asur uledavar ha'muter, it's a base for something forbidden and something permissible. In such a case, if you have on the table, for example, something which is both muktzah and not muktzah, and the muktzah and the non-muktzah is worth more, is more valuable than the muktzah item, for example, in the case of a candle, it's more important than the flame, because ultimately the muktzah over here in the candle is the flame. So we're looking for something that's more valuable and important than the flame. So if on the table you have something which is more important than the flame, when Shabbos comes in, and this is something which is normal that you put that on the table, then you're allowed to move the table. It's not going to become a basis l'davar ha'asur because it's a basis l'davar ha'asur or l'davar ha'muter, and the muter is more important and more valuable. So, case in point, back to the table. If people put before Shabbos, they put chalas on the table. A challah or other Sudas Shabbos important things that you need for Shabbos. Some people are lenient also with putting a sefer. A sefer is more chashuv, beruchni certainly, than the flame. It's more important than sefer. Then you're allowed to move the table on Shabbos because the table doesn't become muktzah. The way we measure value is not financial value, but importance. So money versus a book, a Torah book is more important, especially on Shabbos. And therefore the table is going to become a basis to the sefer and not to the money. One of the questions that people often ask is about a candle tray. There's a tray under your leichter. They sell them, that's how they give them to the kalas. They buy a beautiful, nice silver leichter with a nice, beautiful silver tray. Now the tray is part of the set that comes with the candles. So the question is, I want to move this tray on Shabbos. And this could be relevant with menorahs on Chanukah. There are many, many examples where this could be relevant. So there's a debate over here. Since this tray is primarily made, that's what it's made for. It's designated for Shabbos candles. What is it going to help that you're going to put chalas on the tray or a sefer on the tray in order to make this tray now designated for chalas, which are more valuable than the flame, when that's not what the tray is made for. A table is made for chalas. A table is made for a sefer. A candlestick tray is made for candles only. So some people are very machmer about this, and they say, no, you can't put it on the tray itself. You can put it on the table to allow you to move the table, but you can't put it onto the candlestick tray. Now, the closest that we have about this concept in Shulchan Aruch is that the reason you can't put something on top of the candle itself, imagine someone would come with a chachma, he wants to move the candles. So now my candle is a basis to the flame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the candle something which will make it more valuable than the flame. So the poskim say, including the Alter Rebbe, you can't do that because a candle is made for a flame. That's what a candle is made for. It's not made for svarim. It's not made for chalas. Put a chal on top of the candle. I know it's a bit weird altogether to think of that. But if you think about lamps which have oil in them, and you put on the side of the lamp, on the keli in which the oil goes in, you also put a chal on the side. So to make it more practical. So over there, the ner osri b'shvila shalev is the candle is made for the flame. So you can't just be a smart aleck and put something permissible on it. So the outgrowth of that, some people want to argue that a tray which is made for candles is a similar idea. It's made for candles and it's not made for challah, especially if it's a silver, nice, fancy tray. However, this argument is not so 100% clear. There are many people that are very, very makel about this, and they say that you could actually put on the candle tray as well. Some people want to say, at least if you do it every single Shabbos, one of the arguments is that nowadays people don't use silver candlestick trays for other things, but that argument is not really correct because the very fact that you put in challah means that people do put nowadays other things on the candle tray. So there's room. It's a debate. There's room to be machmer if you want to be machmer. Machmer not rely on putting a siddur on the tray, but the solution is you could always move the candle if you want to move the tray off the table. The way to move the tray off the table is you'll have to move it with your elbows or the back of your hand. The halacha is generally about muktzah that you're allowed to move it with your elbows or the back of your hand. If you have Kanai Nahar, a large family, you keep the mitzvah of Peru, and you don't do any family planning, Baruch Hashem, and you have a candlestick which has 20 candles over there and a nice, beautiful light, I'm not sure if you want to move in the back of your hand. But if you have a bunch of individual, small, tiny lighters, so you could just literally lift up each lighter like that. And you can also lift up the tray also. Just be careful. It's made out of silver. It's expensive. But if you know how to do that, you're allowed to do that with your elbows, the back of your hand. Any muktzah, you're allowed to move the gufa with your body. Let's move on with the rules of buses. There's more to this. If a person puts something on, put a dvar iser on a mutter place, so the mutter place becomes a buses. And he put it there before Shabbos. But he had an intention that it should be removed after Shabbos. Now, how could he remove the muktzah after Shabbos? I asked this question earlier, but let me give you an example. Before we spoke about the fact if it was in theory removed. Now I'm talking about this was an intention, it was a planned act. Before Shabbos, I put down the candlesticks, use a candlesticks example. And my cheshbon was that I'll remove the muktzah after Shabbos. After Shabbos comes in. How could he remove the muktzah after Shabbos comes in? Either I'll move it with a shinui, or I'll get a guy to move it, or the wind will move it, or animals will move it. I'll shake it off. I won't move directly to Muktzah. So I had no agenda for it to be there on Shabbos. I actually wanted it to be removed when Shabbos comes, after Shabbos comes in. So there's a machlekes. Alter Rebbe brings two opinions. The main opinion says it is a buses. You wanted it to be there when Shabbos came in. That's it. The fact that you wanted to find a way to get it off afterwards, that's not going to make a difference. The Alter Rebbe brings a second opinion that's lenient. So what do we do when we have two opinions? So the Alter Rebbe says in the case of loss, you could be lenient. The case the Alter Rebbe brings is a candle that fell on a table, and you're afraid the table's going to get burnt. Not pekuach nefesh. This is a question of just loss of money. So you want to treat the table as a non-buses because you had a plan that a guy is going to come and remove the candles. So the table, you could shake off, you're not allowed to move the candle is muktzah, but you could shake the candle off the table. I mean, obviously, this is a bit hard to understand what that means, but it says we're talking about a case where it's not for sure going to be extinguished, because otherwise you have a problem extinguishing on Shabbos. So the idea is, let me just say the basic principle, because I don't want to get carried away with too many lumdish stuff. The idea is that anytime you put something on a table before Shabbos, well, not necessarily a table, but on anything, and you had an agenda that it should be removed when Shabbos comes in, after when Shabbos comes in a case of loss, you can be lenient and move the buses. One interesting thing about buses is that no one can make your items buses without your permission. So if you have people in your house that are not very responsible and they put things all over the place, and they put muktzah things on your non-muktzah things, and now I'm stuck. They put down their money on my dresser, and I had a plan to move this dresser on Shabbos. So I can't forbid something which is not mine. So even if the muktzah item was mine, but the mutter item, the table, the dresser is my dresser, no one can make my dresser a buses without my permission. Unless he's doing it for my own benefit, he believes that I actually wanted. I always say that I want you to put the money on this table. That's the place of it is. So if it's done with l'toivas chaveda for the other person's benefit, it's a whole different story. Then it becomes a buses. But normally you can't forbid someone else's item without. I mean, this doesn't apply to all halachas. It depends on what type of form of prohibition. If you mix someone else's milk and meat, it becomes treif, right? But in this context, we say you can't make someone else's item a buses without their knowledge. I don't know what the halacha would be if it would be hefker. I don't know what the halacha would be if there's tables in shul. Everybody uses the tables. No, some people put muktzah items, some people don't put muktzah items. They have permission to go, they don't have permission to go. This would make for a very, very interesting question. But let's leave it at that. One example of basis is money in your pocket. Now, so if money is in your pocket, arguably, the whole garment now became a basis. You can't move the garment. But it really depends. Is the pocket part of the garment or is the pocket not part of the garment? Let me explain practical examples. A shirt pocket, the shirt and the pocket are one thing. The shirt itself forms part of the pocket. Your typical white shirt, it's not an added pocket. You can't take out the pocket like you could do with a pants pocket. You could just pull it out because it's not something there's just one layer sewed on top, and the bottom layer is the shirt itself. So over there, the garment is the pocket, and therefore this shirt, money in the pocket, the whole entire shirt becomes now a basis. However, in a regular pocket, a pocket which is an added item, a hanging pocket, like a pants pocket, and they just added it on to the pants, so the pants itself is not a bus, it's only the pocket. So this pants, you're allowed to move this pants on Shabbos, pants, skirts, whatever. There could be multiple examples. You just have to think about the scenario. Is the pocket, the simple way to tell is, in a shirt pocket, you can't pull out the pocket. In a pants pocket, you could pull it out because the whole pocket is an added thing. So even though you're allowed to move such a pocket because the garment itself didn't become buses because the pocket was a separate item and only the pocket is a buses, you can't wear this suit, skirt, pants, even indoors, because we're concerned you're going to walk out with it into the street, which you're not allowed to walk out with in the street in the Rosh Hashanah with money in your pocket or with anything in your pocket on Shabbos. Money in a dresser. You have a drawer in the dresser, and there's money in that drawer. So now, at this stage, the drawer becomes like a separate keli. The drawer is not, and because in this case, the halacha would be that the entire dresser becomes muktzah because of that drawer. Unlike the pocket is muktzah, and the pocket is buttled to the garment. Here, the drawer is not buttled to the dresser, and the drawer becomes a basis. The dresser becomes a basis to the drawer. So the drawer is a basis to the money, and the dresser is a basis to the drawer. They each have their own rules. The pocket is considered so secondary to the garment, the pocket became a basis, but the garment won't become a basis because of that. Are you allowed to use there's different types of garbage cans that are like a drawer, and you pull out the garbage drawer on Shabbos. Are you allowed to use a garbage drawer on Shabbos, a drawer? So if the garbage has some items which are not muktzah, which are more chash than the muktzah items, so very often people have in their garbage food items, which are still edible, even if you threw them out before Shabbos, but technically they're food, or food items that are edible to animals. And those animals are common in the area, so they're not muktzah because animals could eat it. So this garbage has in it muktzah and non-muktzah, and the non-muktzah is more important. But if the garbage only has in it muktzah items, then the whole entire garbage can became a basis to the muktzah, and the whole drawer is now muktzah. So how do you open such a drawer? You should open it with a shinu. You can use your leg, you can use the back of your hand. Now, it could be that even if there's items edible to animals, nowadays not too many people feed these foods to animals. Are there such animals in your vicinity? So even then it might be a problem. But certainly if there's no edible items to animals, then the entire garbage drawer could become muktzah. Someone's asked me a question. They want to put sweet-smelling soaps as a drawer freshener. So inside the dresser drawers, they just want to put some soap in there. Can they open those drawers on Shabbos? There's muktzah, there's soap in there. Soap is definitely muktzah. It's a plain, fragrant bar of soap sitting in the drawer. They're not spraying anything on Shabbos. They want to take out their clothing on Shabbos. So if the drawer has clothing in it, and the clothing are more important than the soap, then it's not a problem because it has a davar asur, davar mutter, and the davar mutter is more valuable. So in such a case, that shouldn't be a problem. To put the soap to begin with on Shabbos, that's a problem, both because of muktzah creating a smell, but otherwise, in this case, that really shouldn't be a problem. Mitzvah will continue next week.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Braun, for the halachas on basis. Okay, for our next class, we are excited to continue our series of Peru Peru Review, Part 4. For the last few weeks, we had the honor of having Rabbi Tovia Kasimov go through the halachas and aspects of Peru Review. We also mentioned more sources on the topic of for people to access helpful information. If you missed it, we highly recommend going back to our archives on mikvah.org/power hour. Tonight, we want to express our appreciation to Jem for partnering with us and giving us permission to share part 1 of their video titled The Greatest Blessing. In the following talks, we'll be able to hear directly from the Rebbe and draw inspiration on this important topic.
Ist zu ihm oder der Rebester gesagt beim Matten Teir, wo demol seine Gewähren alle Nishomische begut. Und die Nishome von dem Kind, was es geboren werden in ein Gedoschen wird. Und der Rebester gesagt, hat der Nishome beloschen Jochi. Und Nechi, Hawaii, Abekecho, Asher Heisesicho, Meeres Mitzrayim. Und dort hat noch nicht nur ihm gesagt, was hat das gehört, hat das hereingeschrieben bei Teile. Und hat das gemacht davon in Teile Gufa, dass es ein Dibris von Teile und in das ein Dibris in Teile, der ersten Dibber in Teile. Und in dem ersten Dibber bei Teile, das Schole von dem ersten Dibber. Und hat noch mit Farsen gewählt. Aber ich habe durchgehend 5.700 mit 41 Jahren. Und danach ist in ein Gedoschen Marum mit geboren geworden, der Engel und der Mädel. Danach wird durchgehend ein Jid und wird er sein, dem Kind, wer liegt noch im Wiegel, er ist geboren geworden, wird er mal scheint an den Kopf. Ort liegt ein Kind, wo der Rebester hat ihm gesagt, und Nechi Hawaii Lekecha, Asher Yitzesicha, Meyeres Mitzrayim. Und die ganze Merkowie dabei gestanden, Meshe, Vejare, Veshivim, Skenim und Shishim, Ribum, Yisrael seien dabei gestanden und haben gehört zusammen mit Sheir, Zippe, Vechulu, was der Rebester mit unter dem Kind, was es geboren geworden, ich muss in Aguf Lemato, ich schnaß, hey, Allah, im Tov, Shin, Memalef, in ein Gedoschen von Israel. Jeder Kind, was kommt zu, in Asamin Huis, ist das ein Benchung gebrochen von der Vater mit der Mutter und von der Seide mit der Bobbe und von der anderen Kinder, was seine schön da in Huis. Als kommt sie zu, noch ein Bruder und noch eine Schwester und eine Benchung und eine Broche von dem ganzen jüdischen Volk, wo nur gefindet sich. Der Rebester kommt zu gehen und sagt, gibt eine Broche. Sie zukommen ein Sohn, zukommen eine Tochter und danach haben wir wachsen, hat man von sehr jüdischen Nachas, wollen wir sehr mechanisch mehr ziehen. In der Weg, wie der Rebester will, gibt der Rebester Parnasse von sehr Masel, von seinem eigenen Liha Kesse, wie Liha so, dass nicht Chas wie Scholem, Last auf Eltern, dass nicht Last, dass ein Sohn und das ist eine Tochter. In einfachen Wörtern ist, das, was der Rebester will geben, ja der jüdische Haus. Und gibt ja der jüdische Haus eine Broche, in alle Unionen und will, dass die Hebroche sollen anerkennen, die Memes, aber wird gebergt, bebonnen und bonnes mit Kindern, mit Dingelach und Mädelach, was wir sichere Sache hat der Vater mit der Mutter weil sie sicher es finden, an die Kinder, werden sie mit Kuyen werden, was man dann gesagt hat, Avraham, Avinu und Sora in Menu. Aber Shomru derech Hashem, lasset Zdoku Mishpot, Yitzave es Bonne, es Bese Achrov, es wird sein als seine Kinder, wo sie wollen uns sagen, seine Kinder, und durch ein lebendiges Beispiel, als sie wollen als sie tun, abhieten dem ewigen Welt, versprechen Menschlichkeit, was ämse Menschlichkeit durch begründet, auf Teres Chai, wo sie sich Teres Emes, Gedei das soll ankommen in ein Leben, aber die Welt soll sein ungefüllt mit Tätigkeit und Gutkeit. Und ein Leben, wie die Schuhe soll einnehmen, die alle nicht gute Sachen, wo sie stehen dazu darf man haben, der Plur, wo dämmelt ist und Milo, es ist im Pastus, als Iden sollen Mekayim sein, dem Eibischen aufnehmen und Mekayim sein, dem Eibischen Bruch ist, was diese auf gebencht werden, bebonim und bonis. Das ist der erste Mitzvah beteira, was Seder in Teire, Zecheche Teire, Vehiro, und das heißt Seder in Teire, Chaim, Hiro, Bachayim, ist der erste Mitzvah, Prur, wo, bis in der Neven von Umilas Horet. Und damit ist eine sichere Sache, und das reicht der Chelik von dem Zivui, wie ich schuhe, an der alle Cheshbenis, was kommen mit dem Oretz, mit der Arzis wie Chumris, wie der alte Rebbe tatscht das auf in der Geres Akedisch, von Gei Echot Beoretz, a viele in Joni Oretz, ist wie Chifshua, nimmt einer zu die alle Cheshbenis und wird auf sie am Mischel wie Scheleit, zieht das Cheshbenis, wie viel Geld wird es kosten, oder Cheshbenis, wie viel Tirche das wird kosten, oder Cheshbenis, wie viel Miet however das wird sein, was Halidei, Zar, Ha-Yibur und Zar, Ha-Leide, und Zar von Gidl Bonne, wie Kajivu Bonnes, wie Kajetse Baseh, werden doch nicht können, Hano haben von Limo Datero, Bimnuchas HaNefesh, oder von Kiem HaMitzvah, Bimnuchas HaNefesh. Oder, die, was trachten echt noch niedriger, damit nicht können Hano haben von Inyone Elam, Takin, Anefen, Kosher, aber die von Inyone Rishus, nicht wie Tero Mitzvah, bis wann der stellt auf a ganze Ort, a ganze Aschkofas Elam, wo sie so aber Aschkofas Elam wie Elam ist Ort, nicht wie Shamayim. Was Elam besteht sich von Shamayim Ort, von Ruchnis und Gashmis, und sie darf sein der Seder, beloschen ha-Yodur, ha-Gboras ha-Ruchnis al-ha-Geshem, und beloschen von dem alten Rebbe in Perik Lev Bitanje, der Nishom Meiker und der Guftofel. Bishas aber sie dovle wie Kishur, am Iskevi de ganze Arzis mit alle Inyonim, und demut werde wie Kishur bepashtus, am nehmt ein und miset, die alle Cheshbenis seine nicht gehalten bepashtus, worden Birchas Hashem hitashi. Und noch demol setzt man nach durch den Wekifschur, als nimmt ein sein Axis und alle Cheshbenis, was seine verbunden mit Teretz. Worum als hebt und trachten, oder sie hebt und trachten, wo sagt ihr nicht schon? Und sie weiß, dass der alte Rebbe hat gesagt, der Pashtus, als a jüdische Nishome ist das Chele, Keleka, Mimal und Meisiv, das Loschen Apostel, und Meisiv Mamash. Das ist ein Mamash, der Jüngin von Göttlichkeit allein. Wenn Mela sieht, betracht sich und betracht sich, wo sagt der Rebeste zu die alle Cheshbenis, sie haben bei mir statt Fieses Mokim, sie errechnen sich mit sie und der Pfarr, wird abhalten, Chas wie Scholem, die geben die Mitzvah, Prur, oder nicht. Ist bei jeder normalen Menschen, was tragt mit einem normalen Seichel, a viele der Seichel von Nefesh Abamis, mit Daphne Tonkum mit Zermuna. Also betracht sich, was tragt seine Schome, was ist ein Heilige Lekami mal Mamash oder ihr nicht Schome. Wenn er geht zu der alle Cheshbenis verbunden mit Teretz, wie viel Geld man darf haben und wie viel Tirche man darf haben und von was man darf sich absagen bemächtigt von den 9 Chedoshim und dann noch der etliche Chedoshim von Jeniki und dann noch Zahl Gidl Bonne mit alle Cheshbenis Amuris Liil. lacht von sich allein, oder sie lacht von sich allein, als sie gar als nicht scheich ist in drauf, dann sein wird, soll haben in drauf, a schakle vitali, wo sagt auf drauf, der Chilkel kam im Al-Mama. Als sie gar lechat Chileli, keine Lichol Cheshen, und Lichol Scheile. Hat sich aber ein Bilbo von Eretz, was sie verbunden mit Cholel als Smolische Belev, wie der alte Rebbe sagt in Tanje, Bitchilosei, darf man haben der Wikifschur. Und noch demut, dass sie dort der Wikifschur, und man hat auf drauf, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nicht, darf haben Keiche Weißem Jodi. Nur jeder Ried und alle Jiden hat Seif Kol Aderis, a viele, noch Parmaten Teiro, sagt man auf sie seine Mamini, sie bekeach Atzmi Zera Maimin, und hat noch auf drauf Bnei Mamini, man hat noch auf drauf dem Keach von der Muna, was gejaschnet von seinem Vater und von seiner Mutter und von seinem Bobbe und von seinem Seiden, also von ihrer Mutter und Vater und Bobbe und Seiden. Ich sagte, demol geht man bis Simcha auf Tuvli wo, und mir fühlt sich in einem Neufen mit Wattel sein, die Gesehre von den Mitzri, Abkever seines Hamayim, Seger seines Hamayim, gedei nicht zulassen, Chas wie Scholem, zu dem Ki Mitzvah zu, und danach verlassen sich auf den Eberschen. Seien die Ki Mitzvah, mit gewinn Poru, Vayishretze, Vayirbu, Vayasme, Bimeid, Bejed, und auch demut hat mir der Aftoche von Viodo mit zwei, als wird Bottel und zerbrochen, dem Medidis war Akbolis, was Ayid hat der Keach, der Pchire, soll sich allein Meizer sein, darüber sich allein Magbil sein und sich allein begrenzen, im Bakumen dem Escher, dem gehässten Glick, was sie kann sein bei Vater und der Mutter, als wird geboren noch ein Kind. Und hat noch Nachers. Und der Nachers kommt beim Davki mit nicht in der Nähe von China ohne Stadlos. Nur ist verbunden damit, was hat Tirche und sie hat Tirche. In dem Gidl Bonim und Bonis, und demol Telefon Zeira Agro hat noch der Nachers noch mehr Tiefe. Und noch mehr breiter und noch mehr reicher, wie von Ajinim, was man bekommt, und keine Stadlos, und non keine Sveikes, und non keine Bilbuli, und non dem Bilbul, was wird sagen, und die Schreine, was lebt in der Zwiedire, lieber in Street, lieber in Gas, sie wird sagen, dass sie ist gehalten, wie Klole Hamode, oder sie nicht ist gehalten, wie Klole Hamode. Wo das Choleba se hebt sich an, als betracht sich, als hat Chileke lekam im Al-Mamash. Und das ist sein Nike. Bemeile zum allen Menschen darf man wissen und fragen, wo soll der Chileke lekam im Al-Mamash, ist noch bederich Memeile werde wie Kifschur von dem Cholel Asmoli, Kifschur von dem ganzen Eretz, was hat demult wird der Linie von Plur, Wu, Mila, Sors, wie Kifschur, im Pschute shel Mikra. Am nehmt ein, der alle in Jonen Gashim, als sie werden bei ihm Badine. Tomer darf haben mehr Geld, hat mehr Geld, darf haben eine größere Giere. Warum sie geboren geworden, noch ein Ingel und noch ein Mädel. Gibt ihm der Rebischte eine größere Giere, darf haben noch Malbushim. Und Malbushim Jofim. Warum sie werden geboren, ein schöner Kind, darf man haben schöne Lewushim verhält. Gibt eine Möglichkeit, käfen schöne Lewushim, bei jedem, wo Ajike, als sie wird Kinder, wo sie sein Nichein, wo sie seine Meizechein, ben der Lekim wurde. Gedei zu machen, den Nissan leichter, hat man gesehen, in was sie besteht die Aufführung. Beschaß man geht mit dem Weg, was man es gegeben hat, politische Normen Pläne. Aber das ist, als ein Mensch darf leben in der Chaim, in der Seide, mit Sude. Turner nicht tonte Sachen, Teilne macht nicht fliegt im Plan. Das ist also einfache Sachen. ist eine sichere Sache, man darf stellen einen Plan, wer man soll haben Kinder, wie viel man soll haben Kinder, und was man soll haben Kinder. Mit alle Protein, das haben wir alle Unionen bedürfen, dass eine seidene Suppe so ungetan geworden, ein Verdover am Masik. A viel, dass ein Masik darf nicht erklären, wie man sagt, dass die, was viele sagen, nicht war keine jüdische Tochter gedacht. Mit Planning, Family Planning. Wie kann jetzt bringt das zu früher, zu Anstrengung, in Beziehungen zwischen der Mann und der Frau. Danach bringt das zu Kaletschen, Rachman und Islam, sie zusammenleben zusammen. Wollen da Abhittung gehen, und da Begrenzung gehen, und da wird Abreges, und da wird Ungesehenkeit. Und danach ist Beschaß mich stärkt, dem normalen Eifen, wie der Eberster hat eingestellt bei Terosse, und hebt so nach hinten reinbringen Änderungen. Und wo sie ändern in einem radikalen Weg, den normalen Leben von Aiden, und noch mehr den normalen Family-Leben zwischen einem Mann mit einer Frau, ist das eine sichere Sache, dass der für mich das macht, das zu reizt, die Beziehungen, das stärkt zu Scholem Beis, und was noch mehr, das stärkt und das riecht dann den gesund, sei von der Frau und sei von der Mann. Und wie mir sagt das Bepelo, die, was vernehmen sich mit die Sachen, kommen, nicht war kein jüdischer Haus gedacht, hat mit zu tun, nicht war kein jüdischer Haus gedacht, mit Psychotherapie, mit Lebensedoktrinen, wir sollen heilen die Nerven, mit Lebensedoktrinen, wir sollen erregt, wir sollen geben an nichts. Was jeder Mann soll kommen mit der Frau und wie die Frau soll kommen mit dem Mann. Wir leben zu Doktrinen, wir sollen geben Pillen mit Hormonen, mit allerlei Sachen, was sie sollen verbeiten, die normale Sachen mit normalen Gang von einem jüdischen Leben. Und nicht all der sehr viele Banit in, und das halt nie, das bringt rein einen Plan und eine Tochnis und eine Seder im Leben, eine Sache, was macht, will reintragen. Eine Änderung in dem Seder, wo der Rebbe hat eingestellt in sein Teil. Und hat gesagt, dass sie dort die Begrenzung gehen in bestimmte Zeiten, in bestimmte Pfannen und für bestimmte Menschen. Und man darf sich nicht reinmischen in den nebelsten Story. Und damit hat man den nebelsten Bruch in der Fußter Moos. Das ist nicht eine Sache, was man will sich heiraten, was man in Islam. Aber das macht schwerer dem Leben. Und bringt rein Komplikationen im Leben, das ist Punkt der Hyper. Es ist noch nicht so sehr viel Bliss-Heder und sehr viel Komplikationen, was bringt rein, wird reingebracht. In jeder Haus hat viele von Nitiden. Durch den was man mischt sich in Sidre Achayim, wie hat der Ingen, was wird angerufen, bestimmt Family Planning. Weil Koromo, das ist nicht eine Sache, was man darf suchen, ich muss es vor ihm, jeder, was lehnt Zeitungen nach viele. Und der, was weiß, was tut sich bei Doktoren, nach Monel Islam soll nicht zu rufen, nicht darf ankommen, wird sehen, wo das wird angemacht, für Monel Islam, für Shinui, für Änderungen in jüdische Häuser und nicht jüdische Häuser. Bei der Reino sagt man, dass da sehen, wo der Rebbe mit einem Hayiduim lei, weiß sehr schlimm ist und sehr innen ist, aber haben Asamin und Asamin Mispur von Bonim, Asamin und Asamin Mispur von Bonis. Und haben sie bis man am Juchot und bis man am Zugol und wissen die, dass der Rebbe setze Matei. Und mit der Matei lehete sich eine sichere Sache, der Rebbe kleibt die Zeit, was ist am besten, für den Vater und für die Mutter, und beike die beste Zeit für ein Kind, was wird dann noch geboren. Und danach hat der Ewigste seine Timing, was einmal legt er das auf, aber das soll kommen in ein Mesches Mann Jachrise. Wo bei der Kafschi der Achmon der Lomelo, a Bosser Vodam, a Nivro, kann nicht wissen, sichle, wie Time of Shell Habere, hat ihm aber gegeben Pchire, aber Bacharto Bachaim, hat die Möglichkeit von Chas v'Sholem das abhalten. Die Möglichkeit, wenn sie wird der Rieb oder wenn sie wird der Leider, hat Rufi Balabos mehr nicht wie der Rebischte. Die einzige Sache, aber wo der Rebischte hat gegeben, zu Abchire von Ayid, zu Anoshim, Venoshim, als sie können Chas v'Sholem das Menea sein, oder Meyakev sein. Und das mit Zadatev, dem soll beweisen, hat mit seinem Namen Chochen Venoven, und nebst der Kajinien von Sakonis Neposhes Rachman al-Islam, Chas v'Sholem, geht man weg zu Arovo, Sert, Kon, Paskene. Al Pi, Heros, Teras, Chaim, zieht das ist so der Fall. Warum allein ist mir eine Gebe Benele darf man wissen, was sagt Teras Chaim, was sie sagen, Teras Semes, und nebst die Takia sei, so hat damals die Adrabe, wird der Hero von Tera, man soll das ablegen. Aber wer ist in der Ruf der Pesach nicht als der, was in der Gebe da war, nur als der, was nicht in der Gebe da war, was nicht gemischuchert, und weiß, was Tera sagt, was Und damals sagt nicht kein eigener Meinung, Chas v'Sholem, sagt der Meinung von Tera, wo das ist der Tera, Bocher, Bono, Nikol Hamim, Venosen Lone, Estirosse. Der Rebester weiß, wenn sie die beste Zeit, nicht nur Beruchnis, nur Rechet Begashmis, Gemduber, aber die Biches Hashem gehen, sei Beruchnis, sei Begashmis, worden bei dem Rebester ist auch Ruchnis, Gashmis, ist auch Schove, und Maschwe, hat ja viele Dosse Koton und Dosse Gode. Weiß der Rebester, wenn sie die beste Zeit, als ein Kind soll geboren werden, und wenn sie die beste Zeit in dem sei für dem Kind, sei für die Mutter, sei für den Vater, und man mischt sich herein mit eigenen Geschbeines, und man sagt, das wird man ablegen auf Mocher, und der zweiten Linie wird man ablegen auf Mocher Leachar Zman. Ist da ein Sipur Niflo, wo die Gemorde der Zilbane geht zu Meshe Rabbeinu. Sagt die Gemorde im Sichte Broches Bitchilosse. Aber ich habe der Rebbe Meshe Rabbeinu hat gebeten bei dem Ebischen, Hidieni Noes Drochecho, hat ihm der Rebester gehenschert, Kishero Si, Lero So, ich habe sicher dir gesagt und nicht dir gerufen und nicht dir gewollt machen für ein Schlier. Also damals gewinnt Lehrer Zisa. Und der Pfarrer gewinnt nicht der noch, wer Isa Sacherai und Pone Lehrer. Was in der Chas v'Sholem zu sagen, hat der Rebester geworden, Breges Chas v'Sholem auf Meshe Rabbeinu. Und der Pfarrer hat ihm auch getan. Und hat ihm nicht mit keinem gewähre Zähne, a viele aber Bosser, wo Dam, a Scholin, ist das echt nicht scheiches zu sagen. Okay, mit Dubar, aber ich habe mich verlost sich auf den Ebersten, ist weiß, wie jede Asidis und jede Amassel behebe. Und nicht alle Protimsche Bedauer, kleibt reis die beste Zeit und die gute Zeit, bis in der Tachlis Aschlemus, sei für den Kind, sei für die Mutter und sei für den Vater. Ma schenken am Esok, Kisherozisi, Leirozisi. Aber verlässt sich nicht Chas v'Sholem, wenn sie sein, der Rossim Hashem, und man mischt rein den eigenen Rotzen. Und man macht ein Cheshben, was jeder Mensch, a viele die Gräste zwischen sie, seinen doch Modu du Mugbal, auf wie viel kann ausrechnen und wie viel kann wissen und wie viel kann abschätzen und allein weiß, als Modu du Mugbal. I Bishas legt darauf, vor die mit Didis Agbol und Agbol ist, Und sagt, nicht, verlässt sich, wenn sie sein, Rotzisi, der Rotzin Asher. Und Vater soll sein und stellt diesem Cheshme Rotzi so, bis man Pläne, bei jem Pläne, ist unter demult fällt der Linie von der Kehli Masse. Auf Aufnehmen hat noch soll sein, die Birchas Hashem, hi Tashir, bis hi Tashir Echet, in Tachlis Ashlemus, in Yonim Ruchni.
Wow, there's nothing like hearing the words from the Rebbe come directly from his mouth. Okay, we'll move on to our next class on Kashrus, and we'll be continuing our new series from last week, Harmful Foods, Part 3, with Rabbi Nissan Zibell. Rabbi Zibell is the Kashrus administrator of the RCF Rabbinate of Central Florida and delivers classes to the general public on various Kashrus topics. He's also highly active in answering consumers' Kashrus questions on a daily basis. Thank you very much for being here tonight with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and a good evening. We are going to be covering today Harmful Foods, Part 3. Last week, we finished off discussing the first topic within harmful foods, the sakana, the danger when it comes to peeled onions, garlic, and eggs that were fully peeled and left overnight. We covered that at length, as well as all the practical ramifications for a kosher consumer. This week, we're going to be starting a new topic within harmful foods, the topic of fish and meat being consumed together, the danger involved, and various practical applications of this danger and what a consumer should be aware of and look out for. We'll begin right from the beginning. Gemara Maseches Pesachim writes that one who consumes meat and fish together can cause davar acher. Literally, davar acher means something else. The commentaries of Mepharshim explain that this can cause actually tsaras. And the commentaries explain that basically this can cause, it's a danger when these foods come together, and they can cause tsaras. Now the question is, what is tsaras? This tsaras that it says it can cause, is that a spiritual danger? Is that a physical danger? Is that a medical danger, or is that spiritual? There are many opinions that say that it is a medical danger, and therefore, if the doctors these days say it's not anymore a medical issue, there's no issue. And the Rambam, the Rif, don't bring this concept, this danger at all. And it's explained because they held it was a medical danger, and in their days, the doctors didn't mention this danger anymore. This is similarly brought in the Neisa Kelim and the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch that Magen Avram as well brings that medically the doctors these days don't say there's any issue with it, so therefore one does not have to be careful to separate between fish and meat. Mishnah Berurah as well brings this Magen Avram. However, many other commentators, including the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, and Alter Rebbe as well, his Shulchan Aruch, all bring that there's still a sakana, and that their approach is assumed that they're assuming that this is actually more of a spiritual danger and not a medical danger. So even if doctors today see no issue medically with eating fish and meat together, there's still a spiritual danger, and that can be caused by eating fish and meat, and that still applies equally. And this is also depending on how you understand the word tsaras. Tsaras can mean leprosy, a skin ailment, which could be a medical issue. Others can understand tsaras, like the original tsaras, that it was something more spiritually based, and therefore also here the tsaras being used is to give us that cue that this is something more spiritually of a danger, not really something that's medically a danger. The Chassam Sofer takes a middle approach. He says that every takana the Chachamim make has the reason, and the open reason, the revealed reason, and also has a deeper reason. So even though the revealed reason may have been medical danger, nevertheless, the fact that they made this takana, that must be that there was also a deeper spiritual reason as well, which we may not understand, may not know, and therefore we cannot cancel a takana that the Chacham made, and we have to continue keeping it. But he holds that it's not any more dangerous on a medical level, and we're just keeping it because if the Chacham made it, there must be other reasons as well besides for danger. Practically speaking, since we follow the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe clearly brings that one who consumes fish and meat together will cause tsaras, and it's a danger. Therefore, practically we consider it still to be a danger, and we keep it all the way. In regards to meat and fish, what kind of meat? So the accepted approach is that all meat, including chicken and fowl and all types of meat, that applies to, you cannot mix that with fish. In regards to fish, all parts of the fish as well are included in this sakana, this danger. There are some opinions that hold that fish eggs, caviar, because they're eggs and they're a separate entity from the fish, just like chicken eggs are parv and are not considered part of the chicken anymore. So too, they say that fish eggs would be like parv and not fishy, don't have a fish status, and could be served with meat. However, others disagree, and generally their approach is to take the stricter approach. However, there is opinions out there which would hold that the fish eggs, caviar specifically, would be permissible to consume with meat. Now, the question is how much of this of fish will make a meat dish forbidden to be eaten due to the danger, or the other way around? Do we apply the concept of bittul? So there's there's a dispute within halacha. Many opinions hold, of course, this is just like any other isser, that if there is 60 times more than the drop that got mixed in, it's batul b'shishim. It's nullified and within the 60, and there's no issue. So if a little bit of fish splashes into chicken soup or into a meat pot or the other way around, if there's 60 times more of the other food, it becomes nullified and batul. However, there is the Taz and also originally the Darkei Moshe, other opinions that hold that we have a concept in halacha called chamir sakanta minisura, that sakana, when something's dangerous, we have to be even more careful than if it was usher, because we have to be so careful with our health and our life, that really our life comes before any mitzvah in the Torah, except for the three big averos that we can't do, and we must give up our life. Otherwise, our life comes first, before Shabbos, before all the other mitzvahs. So in such a case, if this is dangerous for your life, it doesn't matter that they have 60 times more. It's harmful, and one cannot consume it. If there was a drop of poison, we wouldn't just start applying a halachic nullification. You want to make sure there's no danger, and that danger, we're not given any measurement to what amount it's dangerous. So that approach holds. There's no bittul. Generally, most follow the opinion that there is bittul. However, there are some which take the stricter approach, and one should be in touch with the Rav if it's a relevant question to figure out how to go about in such a case. There are those that even take even more lenient approach and say, since this is not Isser, it's not something that's forbidden. We're just told we can't have it because it's dangerous. We could even do something called being mevatel lechatchila, which means you can create a situation of nullification. So if someone had a little juice of fish that went into a pot of meat or a pot of chicken soup, and they realize they don't have 60 times the amount. However, if they add to the pot another few gallons, then they will have 60 times the amount. Generally, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to go ahead and add to a pot to make the Isser batul, or to make the food batul, if it was milchiks or fleishiks. You can't do that. However, some say over here, since there's no really, essentially, it's not forbidden, this food, it's just we're afraid of a danger. If we dilute it to that amount, then there is no issue to do so. This is an opinion. Not everybody holds it out, but there is such an approach out there. So since we want to be careful, even with very minute amounts, unless we're not relying on this concept of bittul as the chatchila, meaning you can't from the start say, oh, it's only a small amount, I'm not going to clean the pot before I use it or something like that. The chatchila, from the outset, we have to always be extra careful that everything's totally clean when we're handling one after the other. So the question is, how clean do things have to be, and to what extent do we need to clean things? So we can learn this from the idea that's brought in the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch. It mentions that between eating fish and meat, one needs to wash their fingers. That's because our fingers handled fish, and now there's some fish residue in the fingers, and now you're going to be handling meat. So therefore, you have to wash your fingers. This is especially relevant in the days that they used to not use forks as much as we do today, and their fingers were a lot more involved in the food. So for them, there was definitely fish residue on the fingers, and it had to be washed with water before going and moving it to the meat meal. If one only used utensils and at no point came in contact with their fingers with fish, then they would not need to wash. But this was assuming that there was some contact that happened, and therefore one would need to wash their fingers between. This could even be practical. At times, we may be holding a cracker that had some tuna on it, or a piece of herring, and we may get some fish residue in our finger. And even if generally we eat with a fork and a knife, then in such a case, if we want afterwards eat chalent or eat some cold cuts or whatever, you would have to wash your fingers between to make sure that you don't have any more fish residue. According to this, the Ramah, however, which is the Ashkenazic opinion, he holds you don't have to actually use water, as long as visually you don't see anything on your hands, you're fine. You're good to go. You don't even have to use a napkin to really wipe it off. If you visually look at your hands and don't see anything, then that's enough. You don't need to do anything else. Now, this ramification also applies in a practical way. So many times people are sitting at the meal and they have two plates, the fish plate and under it the meat plate. And at times, a little bit of the fish plate will get under it on the meat plate. And the question is, what do we have to do now? Is it enough to just take a napkin and wipe off that fish? And then that's it. You don't see anything, it's good to go. According to the Ramah, which would be the Ashkenazic opinion, which we follow, that would be totally fine. You don't have to go wash the plate. However, according to the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah, you would have to go ahead and rinse it off with water to make sure that it's fully washed off. And this would as well apply technically if somebody only had one plate and finished eating fish and wanted to go now put some meat on that plate. According to the Ashkenazi opinion, as long as you wiped it down well and there's nothing visual, that would be enough. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, one would actually have to go and use water to wash it off. That's the fingers. Now, regarding the mouth, it's brought down that one should drink something and rinse their mouth out by drinking something. Some also say that in addition to drinking, one should eat something, chew on something, and like a piece of bread. Some say either or, some say both. And basically by doing so, you're rinsing out your mouth from the fish residue. There is no need to wait any amount of time. That rinse is enough, and one can then move on to the next course, and that suffices. There's an interesting sakana, interesting danger that comes up when doing so, because there's a Tosfos that brings that one who drinks water after consuming fish puts himself in danger. Forget about the danger of meat and fish. We're not even talking about meat. Just drinking water after eating fish puts one in danger. Some say because fish is a water creature and it's considered more cold, and water is also cold. And all that cold can cause someone harm. We're not going to get into all the specifications for that, but there is such an opinion. So those that are chayshish, that are concerned with this danger, would drink something else. Some hold you have to only drink sharp drinks like schnapps or wine, and some will actually have a minhag that specifically between the fish and the meat, they'll have a seil on something else. Others hold you don't have to have a sharp drink as long as it's not pure water. It could be water mixed with something else, or a juice or something, or anything else as well would be fine. And others say that this whole idea of water being a danger does not apply and is not something one needs to be concerned with. Now, some practical applications of fish and meat. So there's sauces out there which contain within them fish. They contain within them anchovies usually. One famous one is the Worcestershire sauce. We'll share some pictures just so people get some visual of the sauces out there, or just to give some visual application. So we have here the Worcestershire sauce. So some of them are clearly labeled OU fish, as we can see here. And the traditional recipe of the Worcestershire sauce is to have anchovies in it. And with it, and basically you'll see an OU fish. However, there are times that the Worcestershire sauce will just have a plain OU, as the one right here from Heinz. There is just a plain OU. However, if you look in the ingredients, this one also has fish. So what's the difference between the two? So it depends. If the fish is so little that it's buttled within this sauce, then the OU will not label it fish because they hold it's buttled, doesn't exist anymore within the sauce. It's no issue. However, when the fish is more significant and is not buttled, is not nullified, that means there isn't 60 times more of the other ingredients, then the OU will label it fish. So one needs to be aware that even if it doesn't say fish, read the ingredients, because most likely, if it's a regular company, the Worcestershire sauce will still have fish in it. It's just going to be buttled, and according to OU, that's fine. Now, when we mention bittul, we go back to the original question. Now, can one take this sauce that had fish in it that became buttul and mix it in to a meat, to marinate meat? And depends on the approach. Some take the taz and say that even if the fish was previously buttled in a sauce, it's not that you're making it buttled in the meat. It's already buttled in a parv sauce. Still, we don't know to what extent the danger goes and would be an issue to use this with meat. Others say no, if it was already buttled within a sauce, it lost its existence and it's not any more relevant. And there's no issue now adding this sauce. The only issue is to when actual fish fell into the actual meat, then it could be more, the sakana could be more activated, even if it would be buttled. But if this was already buttled within another sauce, then that's fine. Obviously, in such a case, one should speak to their Rav how to go about. Other common times that there could be fish used is by Caesar dressing. Caesar dressing, the traditional way, is that it contains fish. They will have Caesar dressings that contain no fish. Here's an example of one. But if one is having a Caesar dressing and they'll be having fish, they should double check that Caesar dressing did not contain anchovies in them and that it's fine. Another application is many times there can be different barbecue sauces. We have here different bottles of Heinz barbecue sauce that are clearly will be used for meat. And if you look, it's designated OU fish as well because they have within them Worcestershire sauce to embellish their taste. And therefore one needs to be aware of that there could be some sauces that one would use directly with meat, which will have actual fish in it. In addition, besides for all that, which we already, based on the things which we mentioned previously, there is the concern when it comes to anchovies, since anchovies are so small and very impractical for there to be a mashgiach to check and make sure that every anchovy is coming with the scales. There's a general concern of hashgachat midis, that there was no mashgiach present when the anchovies were being processed, and therefore it would be muhudar to avoid products that contain within them fish that was not processed with hashgachat midis. This is one aspect of the ramifications or practical applications of fish being mixed with meat. We're going to continue next week, more practical applications to be aware of, as well as this one has to go to the extent of being concerned with blias. Blias is flavor that was absorbed in the wall of a pot or of a dish. The dish is 100% or 1,000% clean. What flavor was absorbed due to heat in the walls of that? Do we now have to be careful between fish and meat in regards to that? That will be covered, Mitzvah Hashem, next week. All the best and good evening.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Zibell, for all the details on the halachas of eating fish and then meat, or vice versa. Before we do our conclusion of Tehillim and Mashiach Thought, we want to reach out to all of our listeners. Baruch Hashem, our classes are continuing, but we need your help to fund them. If you enjoy these important and practical weekly classes, please consider being our partner and keeping them going. We rely on and we also appreciate every contribution, any amount. In order to donate, log on to mikvah.org/donate and select Project Chana Power Hour, and your donation will go towards our program. Thank you so much. Let's take a coin and put it inside the tzedakah pushka and say Gdel tzedakah shemikreves esa geula. And we're going to say the Rebbe and Rebbetzim's kapitel and a kapitel for Eretz Yisrael. The Tehillim is on the screen. Shir hamalis l'david luli adonai shahaya lanu yomer na Yisrael. Luli adonai shahaya lanu bekum aleinu adam. Azai chaim bilaunu bacharis apam banu. Azai hamayim shetafunu nachla avar al nafshenu. Azai avar al nafshenu hamayim hazeidainen. Baruch Adonai shalai nesananu taraf l'shinehem. Nafshenu kitzipar nimlita mipach yak shemapach nishpar va'anachnu nimlatnu. Ezrenu b'shem Adonai aisei shamayim va'aretz. Shir hamalas habaytchem b'Adonai kahar tzion la yimait la'elam yeshiv. Yerushalayim haram saviv lah b'Adonai saviv la'amai me'ata v'ad elam. Ki la yenuach shevat haresha al garal hatzadikim. Lema'an la yishlichu hatzadikim ba'avlasa yedehem. Hetiva Adonai latayvim v'lisharim v'livaisem v'amatim akal kalaisem. Yelichem Adonai es payalei ha'aven shalem al Yisrael. And now for Kapitel Chaf. Amnatzeach mizmar l'David Ya'ancha Adonai b'yam tzarei sagevcha shem elihei Yaakov. Yishlach ezracha mikaydesh u'mitzion yisadeka. Yiskar kal min chesecha ve'elascha yidash nesela. Yiten lecha chelvavacha v'chal atzascha yamali. Nuranina b'yeshuasecha v'shem Eloheinu nidgal. Yamali Adonai kalmish alesecha ata yadati ki yashia Adonai Mashiachai ya'nehu mishmei kacha b'gvuras yisha yaminai. Ela v'recha v'ela v'susim v'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu naskir. Hemakaru v'nafalu v'anachnu kamnu v'nisaidat Adonai hashia hamelch yanenu v'yam kar'enu. Yichya Adonai amen v'rabbeinu melch HaMashiach la'elam va'et. Okay, so a few quick reminders. If you appreciate these weekly classes, share them with your friends and your family. How will you find their playbacks? They're all available on mikvah.org/power hour. And also, they are on all podcast platforms as well as 24/6, which is really awesome because 24/6 doesn't have every single podcast that you can find in every other platform. So utilize that on 24/6. Search us up as Project Chana Power Hour. If you have questions on the classes or would like to dedicate a week of learning in honor of or Lili Nishma someone, please reach out to us via email, projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com. Okay, let's do the Mashiach thought before we go. And the Mashiach thought is right here. Even before the Geula comes, we will merit a succession of divine miracles when one Yid will ask the other, what was the last miracle that just happened? he will be unable to answer because the miracles are taking place in such rapid succession. And these miracles would lead to the ultimate miracle, those which accompany the Geula from Galus. As the pasuk says, as in the days of your exodus from Egypt, I will show you wonders. We look forward to seeing you again next week, and may our learning prepare us and our homes and bring every Jew home to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach now. Thank you so much for joining, and have a good evening.